We're going to rank the rookie quarterbacks in what is looking to be a fairly promising, at least, rookie quarterback class, which is a little bit different than last year, so we're kind of excited about that, especially being Superflex nerds. So we're going to go through and rank these quarterbacks today. First, before we do that, hit the like button. It really helps us out. And then also subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 2,000 with a T.
2,000
subscribers before the end of the NFL draft. So that gets us a month away. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't. Help us meet our goal. We really appreciate it. And we're going to rank all the QBs. Not all of them, actually. There's only 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 8. Yeah, I mean, because
we're not doing top 12.
There's not 12 relevant QBs in this draft because there's barely 5. So, look.
So there's easily 5.
Okay, fine. There's barely 8.
Yes.
We are very aware that this could change. And this is going to be largely draft capital dependent. However, and we need to have a heart-to-heart about this right off the bat, because Anthony Richardson, just to put the graphic up, because this is going to be a good chunk of our video here. What we saw at the combine from Anthony Richardson, something honest. I mean, it's at this point, it's something
otherworldly.
We've never seen before from a quarterback.
Extraterrestrial.
I mean, that would be one word I would use to describe it. And honestly, with Anthony Richardson, I think it's looking fairly promising that he's going to get top 5 draft capital at this point. And we are assuming that is the case when we do these rankings. But when you're looking at the skill set that Anthony Richardson has in terms of his athleticism, in terms of running the ball, in terms of only being a starter for 1 year, and the room there still is for him to develop, obviously, you cannot pick anybody else in a super flex league, in a league that is 6-point rushing touchdown. You cannot pick anybody else to be the quarterback one other than Anthony Richardson. You can't.
His ceiling in the NFL, in Dynasty, is QB1.
It is. I mean, how can you say it's not, guys? If the dude athletically is blowing blowing the doors off Cam Newton. That was almost bad. But okay, reset.
Yeah.
Reset. But obviously there's a lot of questions, and then that's going to be really how does he develop in the passing game. I think this is going to be where the landing spot's going to be important. He's going to have to go to a coach that is number one, good with quarterbacks. I think Frank Reich's a good example. Frank Reich, I trust him to develop a quarterback. I think he would use Anthony Richardson and really highlight his tools in an offense. I'm trying to think of a team that I wouldn't trust him to go with. Maybe the Cardinals. If he went to the Cardinals, just theoretically, I know that he's not going to. I'm not sure I would be super happy about that. I'm not sure I believe in Gannon's ability to develop a quarterback. He needs development.
I don't love him at Houston either.
And that's good. That's good. D'Amico Ryans, is he going to develop a QB like Anthony Richardson to his potential? I don't know. And honestly, I would have a hard time betting on that because he's a defensive guy, and that's just how it is. But Anthony Richardson, I mean, you saw in his only year as a starter, he had flashes of just complete brilliance from a running perspective. I mean, the dude obviously is as dual threat as it gets with that athleticism, with the size. He's hard to tackle. With the speed, he's hard to catch. I mean, he brings it all. He is the total package in terms of that. But when you saw him doing things like progressing through his reads, like his footwork,
raw
being too predictable, would be very, very raw.
Putting it nicely,
bad is what the actual word for it would be. He was bad in the passing game. He just was.
Yeah,
you can't overlook that.
54% completion percentage, 17 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I mean, but again, this will continue to be the question until we know what his NFL draft capital is. But how much did Florida contribute to him being bad in college? How much did they contribute to that?
Yeah, and I think the answer to that question lies within what
Florida
was asking him to do. And I don't know, have you watched the Franchise Guys video on Anthony Richardson?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes,
and he talks about how Florida actually made Anthony Richardson go through and make NFL-style reads. You're talking about guys like Malik Willis, and when you're scouting Malik Willis and watching his film out of college, he's really only running like college-level RPO stuff. I mean, they're not really asking him to make NFL level reads. With Anthony Richardson, they were asking him to do all that right off the bat. So that's good, because I think over the course of the season, you did see some improvement with Anthony Richardson, and he did prove, because he was put in those situations, that he can do some of those things. So when scouts are watching that, I think they're going to, I'm not a scout, but I think they're going to look at that and then have a little bit of hope.
Which ultimately makes me almost 100% convinced that he's going to go top 5. Because if Willis had done any of that in college, he would have gone top 5.
Yeah, but that's why Willis was good, is because he didn't have to.
Right, but that's the point. Is like Anthony Richardson is everything he has athletically is better than Willis did last year.
Oh yeah,
and he's actually made NFL reads. He's
better arm. He's got a better arm.
And I mean, think about what San Fran did with Trey Lance.
Yeah,
like they went for the athletic upside, and he still has value even though he hasn't played going into year 3.
He has higher upside than anybody else in this class from a fantasy perspective, and it's not close. It's not close. I mean, Stroud and Young, they just don't have the athletic ability.
Yep.
Therefore, they don't have the rushing upside that you add on top of what he could potentially be in the passing game.
And that's probably
look at Justin Fields.
That's the biggest point we're going to make here is we play fantasy football. We play dynasty fantasy football. I don't care what your personal preference is for what quarterback you want to be on your team in the NFL. We are playing a game that is not winning a Super Bowl.
Yes.
It's scoring more points than your opponent in fantasy.
I'll prove it to you right now, because I think CJ Stroud is the best quarterback in this draft, and he's my favorite. He thinks Bryce Young's probably the best quarterback in this draft. He's probably his favorite.
We both think it's Anthony Richardson in Dynasty.
In fantasy, in Dynasty, it's not.
It's not.
It's hard for you can't put Stroud and Young on that level, because they don't, especially Young. Like Stroud could maybe get to a point where he could compete with that type of upside, but Young, I mean, Young is just going to be a solid starter. So Anthony Richardson,
S tier.
If he gets that top 5 draft capital, are you taking him 101 in Dynasty?
Oh, 101 in Dynasty. As long as it's not Houston, yes.
I absolutely am. Absolutely, I am. What's the bar for Anthony Richardson once he's in the NFL? Because if it's Justin Fields level performance, it's foolproof. It's just foolproof. Justin Fields came out and laid an egg from the passing game perspective last year, but he was so good on the ground that he's being drafted in the first round of Dynasty startups. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't be, so don't get upset with me. But if that is the expectation, if that's what the bar is for him to maintain his value, when in startups I'm watching right now, he's going at the 310, Anthony Richardson, I'm smashing that, and I will absolutely take him 101 in Dynasty drafts. I don't think the value difference between him and Bijan is big enough for me to say that I'm taking a huge value loss. It's a quarterback, and if you're playing in a Superflex league, that's obviously where you're taking Anthony Richardson. 1 QB, you're taking Bijan, but just in terms of athleticism, generational. There's not a ton we can say.
Yeah.
All right, let's do CJ Stroud, and I'll let you cover the bulk of Stroud here, because So CJ Stroud here, I'm not going to fight this. I really think Stroud and Young are in the same tier. I think it is 50-50. Yep.
Your choice. We just had to pick one, so I guess we went with Stroud here. Look, I talked about this last week in my video on CJ Stroud. He has, of all the QBs in this class, of the top 5 that you're really looking at, he has 0 measurable concerns and he has 0 production concerns, and that equals a safe quarterback, and that equals someone that some team that has some sort of talent can build off of him, and they're going to want to jump on that in the first 5 picks of the NFL draft. I think he gets that draft capital quite easily. I could be wrong, and I could be eating my words in a month. I don't really care, because ultimately we're just guessing, just like you are.
No,
but it's CJ Stroud.
I think you're right. I agree with you. Look, I mean, I've been shouting CJ Stroud for a year. I have, and now it comes out, and I think Frank Reich's in love with him. I think Frank Reich sees him, and I think he just really likes him. Which is
Frank Reich loves safety and consistency.
He does. It's totally a Frank Reich thing to get hooked on a quarterback like that. Like he did it with Carson Wentz, so much so that we sent our freaking first round pick for him. So I think CJ Stroud's a lock to go in the top 2. I think him and
top 2.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Unless somebody takes Anthony Richardson and then Bryce Young.
Okay.
But he's definitely a lock. I don't think he's sliding outside of that. I really, really don't. I don't see it with Stroud. Again, like Nathan said, he's safe. He doesn't have really any huge concerns, and so we like him a lot.
The funny thing too with Stroud is it's so funny how year after year people can't get past the helmet scouting, and you still hear it today. Like when you go on YouTube and you watch videos about CJ Stroud, it will be mentioned at some point in saying that, oh, but he goes to Ohio State, and we know the types of QBs that Ohio State brings out and puts out into the NFL. It's completely different. I promise you it's completely different. And CJ Stroud, in all aspects of the game of football, is a better prospect than Justin Fields was.
And it's hilarious to me how I'm an Ohio State fan, and Justin Fields, like, guys, winning a national championship, like, or not, does not make a difference in the level of prospect. It just doesn't. There's so many factors that go into that.
If that were the case, Stetson Bennett would be going 101 because he's won 2 college football championships.
Yep. And helmet scouting is a lazy take. We're not even going to entertain that. So, Bryce Young, size-wise, fine. Didn't test out of the combine. He's going to test out his own pro day, which I think is this week. His pro day is really soon.
I think he already had his pro day.
Did he really?
Yes.
I
could be super wrong.
Stroud and Levis had theirs.
Yeah.
But maybe he did. I didn't end up seeing what he was running from an athleticism standpoint. But, I mean, he weighed in at the combine, and he was fine. I mean, his size is still going to be somewhat of an issue just because he is that short. But, again, not a big enough concern for us to put him anywhere lower than this ever. I mean, you just can't.
Nope.
He's so good at everything else. I mean, you're looking at his awareness in the pocket. His mobility is to a level. It's at a level where we're not concerned about that. Like, he's not a rushing quarterback, but he's mobile, which are 2 different things.
He's mobile, and he's smart with his mobility. He does not take hits.
And overall, very intelligent. I think he plays very smart. He's got a really, really good arm. He's accurate as heck, just like CJ Stroud. And, I mean, you saw it. He was one of the better QBs, probably the best QB in college football the last 2 years, him and CJ Stroud both. So, really not a lot of questions with Bryce Young, but I know he's a guy that you're high on.
He's a guy that I personally, again, this doesn't really matter in terms of, I mean, I guess it does matter in fantasy production, but like I prefer Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. I still really, really like CJ Stroud a lot. I think Bryce Young, from a passing perspective, I just think he's more ready. I just think he's more ready, and I think he'll produce more right off the bat, and I think his ceiling could even be a little bit higher. Obviously, the biggest comp you're going to hear, because he's small, is Drew Brees, and that is one of the times where, in terms of size, comparing him to one of the GOATs in Drew Brees, I think you can do. I think you can do with Bryce Young, because he does play a very similar type of football in the pocket, where he's just somehow he's so good and so smart that he's able to find like these spaces between the linemen in these passing lanes that your traditional taller QBs don't really have to look for, and he's just so good at it. So He's not afraid to take the short check down passes, and he'll get a lot of yards out of it. So I'm excited to see what he does in the NFL, and I think he's just as capable of being successful as any of these top 3 guys.
He absolutely is. And I would probably take these guys like 51-49. I would say that
That's fine. Yeah.
I think CJ Stroud could offer more rushing upside, though, than Bryce Young. I think he will. And I think
Bryce Young doesn't have any receiving upside. He doesn't. Rushing upside.
Yeah. And that's why I think maybe that I would push back a little bit on the take that Bryce Young will produce more right away.
That's probably one of the best arguments for Stroud.
But it depends. I mean,
also.
Stroud is athletic enough to do that, but he didn't do it at Ohio State. So that's obviously me assuming that he's going to step in and do that.
Right.
2 extremely good quarterbacks. These are the 2 best quarterbacks in the draft, in my opinion. But we're not talking about NFL. We're talking about fantasy. And we have to, there's a extremely, extremely clear differentiation that we have to make between those 2 things. And so we're doing that and drawing the line right here. And then in tier B, and I think B is a good letter for this, because honestly, these are like B minus quarterbacks in my opinion.
QBs that have good upside. I do think Levis's upside is higher than the guy we'll talk about after him, but we do have them in the same tier. That is why we have Levis over this other guy, though. So
it's right there on the screen.
Oh yeah, you're right. Over Hendon Hooker. Fine. So yes, I loved Will Levis from the start. I liked him probably a lot more than I should have. I still do like him. I'm very intrigued by him as a prospect.
Definitely your type of quarterback.
I don't know. Not really, because I have like Andrew like PTSD, and I hate that he takes contact. I wish he were a sole pocket. That's why I like Bryce Young so much, is because he's a traditional pocket passer.
Yes, true.
So with Will Levis, there has been a lot of criticism around what he did at Kentucky, specifically with his production his final year and how it wasn't up to what we expected him to do. And I think with him, there's sort of this false assumption that Will Levis is a boom or bust prospect. And
I think he could just be mediocre.
I think I think eventually, ultimately, I see his floor just being kind of mid. And his ceiling could be really high. It's not going to be the highest of these top 3 guys, but it's good enough that, again, we have him as our 4th quarterback in this class. I think at this point he's pushing top 10. I could see him going top 10. I could easily see him going top 10. I could see him falling outside the top 10.
I think both of those are plausible scenarios. And there have been, like you said, there's been concerns about his production. There's also been a lot of excuses. So there's definitely 2 sides of that. Like, how much are we willing to go out there and say, okay, Will Levis didn't have an offensive line and his weapons were subpar and they didn't use him correctly and he was injured and whatever the heck. And you know, in reality, I think that Will Levis, I think everybody knows, everybody saw him throw at the combine. From an arm perspective, he has maybe the best arm in the draft.
Second best arm.
Yeah. Who's got the first?
AR.
In terms of just strength, though.
Okay, fine. Levis, sure. Yeah. Levis probably has the best. And with him, again, like you said, though, the excuses, I guess for the excuses for why he might not be good is like that he had poor decision making in college. Okay, well, are you basing that off of the highlights or the lowlights, I guess? Because that's inaccurate. He actually makes some of the best NFL level reads that you're going to see in this class in comparison to guys like AR and Stroud. Bryce Young is the best in terms of NFL level reads and awareness in the pocket, but Levis is up there.
Yeah.
And yes, he made bad decisions, but I mean, the relevant excuse is who was he playing with?
Sure.
And again, these guys are college prospects. Football is not your life in college. I don't know if you knew that, but like, there's a lot of room to grow for this guy, and I think if he's put in the right situation, he can build off that. He can be good.
There are still mocks that have him going 1 overall. I mean, CBS did.
There are still, yes.
Which is crazy to me. I don't see it, and clearly we're calling our shot by ranking him 2 tiers off the top here. But he's definitely interesting. And Hendon Hooker's he's also interesting.
I think Hendon Hooker is different from Will Levis because I think he stays where he is. I think he stays in this tier. Levis has the ability to jump up a tier. But Hooker is probably going to stick where he is, and wherever he's drafted, I think obviously he's not starting day 1, and he's probably going to be a guarantee to replace whoever's there on a shorter term contract, like Seattle.
Yep.
Like Detroit.
I could see Indianapolis trading back and taking him.
The Colts could trade back and they could get him.
Yeah. And with Hendon Hooker, I think another thing, him being in this tier, is he's not somebody that needs. I don't think he's somebody that has that much room to grow and develop. Like I think he was fairly polished in college already, and honestly, his upside as an NFL QB isn't going to be what Will Levis, what AR, what those guys are.
Very Kenny Pickett-esque. Actually,
yeah, I actually like that.
Not in terms of his play style and ability, but in terms of what he did in college and the type of prospect that he is going into the NFL. And where did that get Kenny Pickett? That got him top 20 draft capital.
And I would not be surprised if he got Kenny Pickett draft capital. I wouldn't. Like if he went,
I think he goes top 20.
If he went in the 20 to 30 range, that would not surprise me. But I can almost guarantee he'll go before the mid second. Like I know he's going to be in that range. Yeah. So the range of outcomes for Hendon Hooker are obviously promising enough to where he's a relevant QB. I mean, he's somebody that if I'm getting to the second round of my Dynasty rookie drafts and I'm seeing a bunch of running backs with 3rd or 4th round draft capital and receivers with 2nd or 3rd round draft capital, heck, I might be taking Hendon Hooker just because he's a quarterback in a Superflex league. Like, I mean, I think he's good enough to be relevant, at least in fantasy. But I mean, I think he's definitely good enough to be an NFL starter. Yeah. And being a starter, I mean, you're just a warm body playing the quarterback, which from a fantasy perspective is kind of what you're looking for. I mean, we went out and started Mike White last year on our fantasy playoffs, right? I mean,
yep. And I mean, let's just assume that Hendon Hooker goes 2nd round. That automatically makes him a very intriguing prospect where he is going to be worth the pick in your Dynasty rookie draft because you don't see very many QBs go in the 2nd round historically. Usually there's those top guys that the NFL wants to take their shot on, and then there's a huge tier gap between those first rounders and then the ones going in the 4th and 5th or even 3rd at the highest. But 2nd round picks, I mean, you got Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round. You saw what he ended up doing. I'm not saying Hendon Hooker is even close to what Jalen Hurts is or will ever be. The point is there are still intriguing prospects that can still be successful that go in the second round because that is respectable draft capital and they will get opportunities. Jordan Love, he did go in the late first round. He's basically a second round pick though. And look, he's going to get an opportunity in Green Bay. Kyle Trask is going to get an opportunity in Tampa. He just is. These are these second round guys that are going to get opportunities and they could absolutely capitalize on that.
I agree with that. I wonder how many opportunities they'll get though, and I wonder how eager though both of those teams are to give them opportunities. Like that's a whole different discussion.
It really
is.
The
D tier is going to be. That's funny though. You actually had the C tier as the rookie running back videos, but
this is the C tier.
That should be C. Yeah. The C tier. We're going to rapid fire these real quick because we're at 20 minutes. Tanner McKee, a guy that was in Devy leagues at least more popular than he was right now, like in years prior to this one. But in all honesty, he's probably just pretty mid. We're putting him here because he's one of the only like capable quarterbacks left in the top 8 for sure.
If the NFL is today what it was 20 years ago, he would be a candidate for the first overall pick. He is that traditional, that old school. He's incredibly immobile. He takes a ton of sacks, but he's a Stanford prospect. He's smart. He makes good decisions, but in terms of fantasy, again, he just has a super, super low ceiling. So I don't really know where teams are going to grab him in the draft. Like it'll be interesting to see. But again, he'll probably, I think he'll be relevant.
Go for Stetson Bennett.
Stetson Bennett, yay, he won 2 college football playoffs. This isn't college.
Yeah,
he did look okay at the combine. Actually, he did.
We were watching. We're like,
he boosted his stock. This is a guy where
be a good backup.
I could see him go late second or even third.
It'll be interesting. And then Aiden O'Connell, I think he'll get drafted somewhere 4th, 5th, 6th round.
Yeah.
We're probably a little bit biased. You could put Max Duggan here.
I wasn't a huge fan of him.
I wasn't either. And honestly, we're in Indiana and we've watched O'Connell play for a long time at Purdue. So we like him here. We'll put him as the last quarterback in these rankings, but obviously those are subject to change as well to see, just depending on who gets the higher draft capital. So that's how it is right now. Let us know what you think about Anthony Richardson at the 1 spot and a tier above Stroud and Young. Obviously, we love Stroud and Young as quarterbacks, as NFL prospects, but this is Dynasty, this is fantasy, and things are different here. So let us know what you think about that in the comments. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We've got Dynasty content coming out every single week leading up to the draft, including some draft day content, which we're going to be excited about announcing here soon. But make sure you subscribe to the channel to get all the exclusive access to our content. As always, we appreciate you watching and joining us, and we'll see you later.